I was quite entrepreneurial from quite a young age. Started my first business at around 18 years old. As you can kind of hear from the accent, I'm from the UK, but I was actually educated out in the US. I was a football, or as you guys say, soccer player, as well as like a basketball player. So I started my first business kind of centered around helping kids from the UK to go over to the US and play soccer over there. At the time, the kind of depth of my knowledge in sales and marketing was kind of as far as my parents had told me, which is the idea that, yeah, if you do a great job for one kid, then the next one will come around, and next thing you know, you're going to have a multi-billion-dollar business. Newsflash, that didn't quite happen. It was a real big head scratcher for me because we did create some really great stories and our client results were really, really strong. So that kind of really pushed me into the marketing world. Kind of fast forward to today, I have my own marketing agency. We help service-based businesses kind of build through paid advertisements, and kind of on my journey, I've worked with some pretty, incredible people who have taught me a lot about, the importance, kind of as this call's about, the importance of, you know, more than just ads when it comes to client acquisition. There's a lot more that goes into consistently being able to bring in clients than just kind of throwing some ads out there and kind of hoping that that sticks. So that's kind of some of the stuff that we'll be getting into today, but that's kind of like a brief overview of myself and my journey.
Thanks for that. So just kind of lobbing you the first soft question here. What do you define as an offer? I know we talk about offers, and I hear so much conversations out there about you need an offer. Everyone needs an offer, right? How do you define an offer when you start thinking of offer? Like what goes through your head?
Yeah, I think a good way of defining an offer, or what an offer is, it's the positioning of your services or your product, right? And the reason why I would probably use those terms to define it is because two people can sell the exact same product and have different offers around that exact same product or service, but it can be very, very different. So I'll give a quick anecdote from I was briefly speaking to Tim right now just before. I was working with a client. We actually just had a strategy call earlier today. And one of the things that we were discussing as kind of testing as one of the offers is, their agency, they do creative production. And like most agencies, they run kind of a regular retainer offer. What I suggested testing is to change that regular retainer offer into kind of a 12-week transformation deal package, so to speak. And the idea around that is you kind of have a little bit more of a defined end goal. And it can be just a different way of packaging the same service that would happen over the same 3 months. Because it's not as if after the 12-month period, technically the client has to leave. They can continue on in whatever fashion you want them to, but it's the positioning of it being a 12-week transformation program rather than a 3-month retainer. That is two different offers for the same service. So that's why I would say that an offer is the positioning of your product or services.
Positioning of your product or service. That's great. And it sounds like there's a few components, a few pillars of an offer. What are some primary pillars that we should be thinking about as we put together offers?
Yeah, so I think that specifically the to even kind of take a step back from that, because I think that as much as offer is important, it is very important that you are creating a strong offer in a market that needs the offer that you're providing, right? And I'm a perfect anecdote for that. You may get a lot of anecdotes from me, so kind of be ready for that. As I said, with my first product or service, my first service that I was providing to people, we had great client results. The offer was pretty strong. Hey, have an opportunity to get a scholarship and go and play and have this amazing experience in a country, the USA, coming from the UK, sounds like a great offer, right? But unfortunately, the market didn't have the correct, people within it, and they didn't need the service enough for it to actually drive people, right? So the first step to a strong offer is ensuring, or at least giving enough time to think about product market fit, right? Because it's very, very easy, especially if you kind of have what I refer to as like an anecdotal business. because I had said problem, everybody probably has said problem, and hence I'm going to build a product around it. That is the easiest way to fall into a bad market, because you are not the market. Just because you think it's a good idea doesn't mean the market agrees with it, right? So I'd say the first step to building a strong offer is having the correct market that you're going into and offering that offer to. But if we were to kind of speak about the offer itself, I always lean on kind of Hormozi's framework. If you guys don't know who Alex Hormozi is, I think it's very important that you write that name down and you go and look at as much of his stuff as possible, because he is a absolute genius. And in his book, he one of his biggest strengths is he takes ideas which can be explained very complicated in a very complicated way and makes them very, very simple. So, kind of what he speaks about is kind of these things, they're called like value drivers, basically. They're kind of the four main things that help your customer define the value of your offer. And those four things are kind of the end result that you're going to be getting for these people, how confident that your customer actually is that they're going to be able to achieve that result, how long it is going to take to achieve said result, and then how much effort and sacrifice do they actually have to put in to achieve the said result, right? So with those four things, I would say that, again, the first thing is finding that product market fit, and then trying to make that desired outcome or that end result as strong as possible. Try and have the customer or potential customer feel like they have the highest perceived likelihood of achieving that result, trying to decrease the amount of time that it's going to take for them to achieve that result as much as possible. And then also trying to reduce the amount of effort and sacrifice that individual has to put in to achieve the result. If you can nail in 1, 2, 3, all four of those, you're going to have an incredibly strong offer.
I feel like we can end the call right there, because I mean, that it really is the foundation. And you're right. Hormozi is a bit of a genius, our modern day marketing guru right now. And his books basically lay it down. And I like what you're saying about all four, but let's just kind of peel some of these apart. So the sacrifice is a big one, because we always say that people would rather not fail more than they would rather succeed. So how do we show someone that they're not going to fail? What are some of the language or some of the mechanisms of how showing someone they're not going to fail?
Yeah, so where possible, you want to try and include some sort of a guarantee, if possible. And I think naturally, and especially had if you had suggested that to me at the beginning of my journey, my immediate fear is, okay, well, if I have a results-based guarantee or a satisfaction-based guarantee or even some sort of a conditional-based guarantee, I'm going to get a ton of refunds. I'm going to be doing all this work. People are going to be refunding me for what I'm doing. But at the end of the day, what I found in my experience and with people that I consult and, across, the data that I am able to look at, as long as you offer a service and give the clientele, a good experience, right? If you are offering something, I would hope that, you're not kind of scamming people, and whatever they're paying for, you're trying your best to provide for them. As long as they see that, it's not that often that people are actually going to go through the steps to go and actually ask for a refund, right? So there is a lot more to gain than there is to lose in terms of a guarantee. But kind of outside of guarantees, I think that social proof is going to be your best way of increasing that perceived likelihood of success, right? If you kind of think about your purchasing journey, this is why I always explain that that marketing oftentimes is not linear, right? Yes, every now and again, if you have great pain, someone has a fantastic ad, their offer is very, very strong. Maybe you see the ad, you land on the landing page, you give your information, you get a call, and you sign the contract. That can happen. But 8 times out of 10, the journey is actually you see the ad. The ad then makes you want to go to Google to maybe look up that company. You check the reviews, you see some of the YouTube content that they have, you check Trustpilot or whatever, whatever system you want to use to be able to check some of that credibility. You go to the website, and through that that journey, it then brings you back into the funnel where you kind of end up closing because you've been able to build up that idea in your head that that perceived likelihood of achievement is high enough to actually go through with the purchase, right? So I think that from a perceived likelihood of success angle, I think that the two main things that you should be kind of focused on is building up as much social proof as possible, really investing in lead nurture, and then really investing and spending time thinking about how can you position a guarantee that you're comfortable with offering and you think that you can fulfill on, but also is strong to the consumer that makes them feel comfortable that you're going to be able to kind of put your money where your mouth is and achieve the results you think you can achieve.
That's a very great, thorough answer. So just to recap a little bit on that, the helping people perceive that they're not going to fail, doing that with good social proof, making sure that when I go looking for what your offer is, I can see on Trustpilot or in the reviews, I can see the press, I can see the PR, I can see happy customers and testimonials, and this helps me increase my trust factor. And then if you layer that over with some kind of guarantee, like a money back, a 30-day trial, so like love it or send it back, anything along those lines, then this helps us get over the hurdle of trust, right?
Yeah.
We always say you need to be known, liked, and trusted. Trusted is kind of like the last piece. Let's talk about the first piece. Let's talk about being known. So we talked about product market fit. Having a solution without a problem is bad. So you want to have a solution and a problem that are perfect fit in a market that it works for. But even if you have the world's greatest offer, even if you have, if you're turning water into gold, or if you're curing some disease and no one knows about it, what good is it? So most folks don't know where to get started, how to get started with budget. Which marketing channel do I use? Facebook? Do I use Google? Do I spend $100 a day or $1,000 a day? What do I do, right? A lot of people think they can get it all done with organic, just free posting on TikTok and social media. What's your take on the known part, being known, how to get known, especially let's say on smaller budgets?
Yeah, so I kind of first want to touch on the organic piece of things because you see that a lot, right? Especially people who are a lot newer to marketing. It kind of sounds good, the ability to post really engaging content, grow your following base, and kind of with targeted and relevant followers, and then be able to convert them on the back end. And what I always tell people, because as part of our agency, we also will do kind of like social media management as well, and kind of helping people with the organic side of things. But what I always explain to people is that social media marketing and organic posting is more to be able to build strong social proof than to actually convert. And the reason for that is because if you think about it from the perspective of the actual platforms themselves, right? And I think that now that TikTok has been around for long enough, and most people on this call would be familiar with TikTok, it's very easy to see this time horizon, or this process play out over this entire time horizon because it's only been about for how many years, right? So whenever there's a new emerging platform like a TikTok, the way that these platforms grow is that they really push organic growth, right? So if you were very early to the TikTok game, so to speak, you posted a couple of videos, dancing, mouthing to the words, and if you did that consistently, next thing you knew, you had millions of followers. They also monetize that following base very strongly to be able to incentivize new people who were not on the platform to come to the platform because there's this amazing opportunity to grow organically, not spend any money, and actually monetize that growth, right? That is a great technique to be able to draw people in. But once you have successfully drawn people in, which is where TikTok currently is, now what you do is you slow down organic growth, right? And you don't incentivize that as much. And now it's pay to play. If you want to grow on the platforms, then you need to spend money, because if you think about it from like a corporate perspective, TikTok is a company with shareholders that are trying to see profit. So they need to think about strategic ways to be able to maximize the stock price of their company as much as possible. And that is the framework that has worked across many different platforms. You get people then through organic, you then get, once you have that base, you then, constrain the organic growth and you have people pay to play because the eyeballs are already there, right? So as much as organic sounds like a good idea, it's very, I think just to quickly call that out, I think it's very important not to fall into that trap as to thinking that that's going to be a way to grow a $1 million business by posting good content on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, right? But to quickly kind of talk about as a starting spot, low budget company, you have a product, you have a service, you're looking to market it. My personal belief is that Facebook and Instagram is the best place to start, unless potentially, I think if you have kind of you're looking at e-com product that's potentially targeting a younger generation, potentially TikTok is also a good place because you are able to do a lot with your spend. But let's take like a local service business, for example. I would advise, hey, you want to start on Facebook as opposed to say a Google. Now, the reason for that is because I explain Google as a platform which is consumer to ad, and Meta is a platform which is ad to consumer, basically meaning that when you are looking for a window cleaner and you're on Google, you type in window cleaner in Boston, Massachusetts, window cleaner in New York City, right? Maybe not New York City, but you know what I'm saying. And with that being said, you as an advertiser are paying for the access to the real estate to have your name come up first, right? So it's very much a pay to win circumstance, right? The higher your budget is, again, going back to the shareholders and the fact that these companies are trying to make money. If there are two top spots, they're going to give those top spots to whoever's going to be prepared to pay the most to get those spots, right? And obviously within the algorithm, there are other factors, but one of them is how much you're willing to bid on that amount, right? Whereas Meta and Instagram is ad to consumer. So with the way that cookies and data is mine nowadays, for the better, whatever your opinions are on them or your opinions, I frankly as a marketer like how much data we're able to access these days. But when you've typed that in, next thing you know, you're scrolling on Instagram or Facebook and you see an ad for a window cleaner, right? And with that being said, at lower budgets, what you are able to do is you are able to 100% get your ad in front of people, right? From there, it's going to be how strong is your offer? How good is your copy? How good is your creative? That is what's going to decide whether they click the ad or not. But you are going to give yourself the opportunity for me, I think a starting budget for ads at a very, very bare minimum is probably about $25 a day, which works out to be about $750 a month, generally speaking. At our agency, we don't work with any company coming in with anything lower than that because it's just too small of a budget to be able to test effectively. But at as little as $25 a day, ideally closer to $50 or $100 a day, you can get your ads out to your target audience. And again, if you have everything else dialed in, you can see conversions for cheaper than somewhere like Google. So I kind of hope that answers that
Yeah,
question.
it answers. And there's a wide range of businesses out there, and even on this call, we have e-commerce, consumer products, we have business to business services, financial services, IT services, agency services. I'm just kind of like looking at the list of who's joining here. Do you recommend different platforms, or what's your perspective on different platforms for different services?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I definitely do. And I also recommend different strategies for different size businesses, right? Like one thing that we spoke about a lot on our calls is the ability to try and have an omnipresent feel online, right? So if you are a bigger business, it may be worth, let's say you kind of through your strategy, Meta makes the most sense for you, right? It may make sense to run a top of funnel campaign through Meta, but then also have kind of like website visits or landing page visitors retargeted on YouTube for that idea that somebody may see your ad, click on your funnel, not convert, go to Google, start typing in, but then you know, their partner calls them, they have to go and, I don't know, do the dishes or something like that. They come back, they've now forgotten about your company, but now they're about to watch a YouTube video, and that same company that a couple of hours ago showed them the ad on Facebook magically appears on YouTube. And a lot of people who don't understand marketing are like, dude, how did they do that? I hadn't seen them yesterday. I saw them on Instagram today. I'm now seeing them on YouTube. These guys, they must know that I really need that service. When in reality, all it really is they've just run a retargeting campaign, and because you've landed the landing page, you're now getting run through YouTube,
Right.
right? So, I would recommend different strategies for different size businesses, but you know, my very quick and again, obviously in each account, and if let's say I was to do a full audit of your account, you know, potentially we may come to different conclusions, but as a very kind of surface level way to kind of put it out to the group, I would say that if you are kind of an e-com product type business, then TikTok and Meta are going to be the two places that you want to look at. If you're kind of looking at a little bit of a younger audience, I would definitely recommend TikTok. Potentially, if you're looking at a slightly older audience, maybe Meta might be a little bit more appropriate. Whereas for kind of service-based businesses, Google and Meta are going to be the two places that you're going to want to look at, with depending on kind of what budget, who you're targeting, how much you're prepared to spend to be able to actually generate a lead as part of that testing phase, how much budget you have to test, right? Then that will be kind of the metrics we're going to be looking at as to whether it makes sense to start on Meta, start on Google, or be able to put the budget into both and use different strategies to target people that way.
Yeah. I like customer journey. You touched upon that. How important is it for someone to design and map out their customer journey? Or is it better for someone to just test to see what their actual customer journey is? I mean, I once heard take me out of media. So a lot of times people say, well, I do this.
Yeah.
So it's like my customers will do that. I think there's some truth to that. You know, I like the exercise of saying, you know, picking a couple different avatars and saying, Jim wakes up at 6 a.m. and he has 3 kids and he rushes to drop them off at school. He listens to this radio station on the way in. I think that's a very good practical exercise. But I've also seen other marketers that say, let's not even do that. Let's just throw ads out there and test and kind of see where people are falling and landing, and then we'll kind of map out the customer journey that way. What's your take on that?
Yeah, and that's where there's the beauty of marketing of there's many different ways to skin a cat, because I think that those two techniques are going to come down to a budget perspective, right? In an ideal world, you don't want to work off of any assumptions, because assumptions can have the ability to make an ass out of you and me. I like that anecdote. But with that being said, if you don't have a ton of capital available just to kind of, at the end of the day, with any type of broad testing, a lot of it is intentionally throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks, right? Because you have to get an idea for, oh, this channel really doesn't work, but you have to spend enough to actually give an opportunity to work, right? So I think it depends on where you're at. If you are a bigger business who has the opportunity to be able to test widely and get bona fide answers as to which avenues are performing the best, and then pooling your ad spend into those areas, that's an ideal world. But most businesses, even some mid-sized businesses, even some large-scale businesses, aren't comfortable from a financial standpoint of taking a budget and being like, look, Jacob, take this and go and test. And once you've spent all of this, then we can look to nail in our targeting, right? So in most situations, I do think mapping out your customer's journey makes the most sense. And you have to try your best to be as objective as possible, right? It's something that, even being in the space for as long as I have, you know, I struggle with completely taking my own personal biases out of, and whether it's ad copy, whether it's creative, whether it's mapping the customer journey, it is difficult. But at the same time, I think that, you know, you can work under certain assumptions. You can try and make your direct funnel as dialed in as possible to be able to capture as high as a percentage of people as possible. And what I mean by that direct funnel is that, again, let's use Meta as an example. It's understanding what is going to be hooking these people, right? How are we going to get these people's attention? once we've gotten their attention, how are we going to keep their attention and actually motivate them to click the ad? Once they click the ad, where are they landing and how easy is it for them to take the action that we want them to take? Is it whether it is buy a product, whether it is become a lead, right? And then also understanding that between, and again, that's just kind of the top of funnel. There's also kind of the back end, like ascension model, and how do we actually get them to buy if they're a lead, right? But also within that, there are going to be circumstances where you work under the assumption that this person has landed on your landing page, they've clicked to buy the pair of jeans that you're selling. It was in the cart, but they didn't quite close. So potentially you're running a specific retargeting campaign to that individual to be able to push them. Maybe you give them a specific offer to be able to push them to buy. So I do think that at smaller budgets, there is a lot of value in mapping out that direct customer journey and kind of the retargeting campaigns around that, if that's kind of the strategy you're going to be running. But yeah, I think that again, at smaller budgets, you should do that. And if you do have a bigger budget, then it will definitely be worth testing broadly, seeing what works, and having those kind of definitive answers, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I always say know thy customer and know them like the back of your hand, know them well. Most of us, we start our businesses because we are our own customer. So I say, hey, I like skateboarding, so let me start a skateboard company. Or I'm really into guitars, so let me start some kind of guitar type business. So because we're practitioners, we're advocates of our own industry, we often then go start a business doing that thing. If you ever read the E-Myth, that's kind of like the core tenet of the book. So I think it's okay to use yourself in some examples. And then I love what you're saying about, a lot of ways to skin a cat, and you just kind of have to test. So the focus of this call is the importance of offers. What about multiple offers? So does a good offer contain multiple offers? A free
Hmm.
offer leads to a low cost offer, leads to a high priced offer, or multiple doors in, or in your experience,
Okay.
it's better to just have one. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So yeah, I think the question would be specifically, can one funnel have multiple offers, right? Which
Should one funnel have multiple offers? I guess that might,
yeah,
yeah.
and I think that so the answer of should is again, it's going to come down
Right.
to what you're selling. If you are a plumber, you know, potentially, or let's say you're kind of a boiler maintenance engineer, right? Potentially, I see a lot of people doing the kind of, they have I used to work in the boiler space quite a lot. So there'll be a lot of plumbers or boiler engineers that would kind of run an offer around like monthly maintenance packages, and there'd be like a bronze, a silver, and a gold. And it's like, I don't know how many people are paying the extra $50 a month from the bronze to the gold offer to be able to maybe get seen quicker if their boiler breaks down, but they're probably going to get seen anyway on the bronze, so it is going to depend. Whereas again, if we're talking an e-com product, you're selling let's say t-shirts. Obviously, offering a discount on the t-shirts can get more people through the door, but then that's going to eat directly into your profit margins because you're spending a lot on merchandise, things of that nature, right? So with that being said, those funnels try and get people through the door at top of funnel price. But if at certain points, somebody, as I mentioned, they added to cart, they didn't buy, maybe you offer that person a 15% discount because it's better to sell that shirt at 15% discount than not sell that shirt at all, right? So that's where we're getting into the weeds a little bit. There is, as much as marketing at certain levels can be quite simple, and I do think the space is full of people that try and make it more difficult than it is. There are also certain elements to it which require a lot of thought, and to be very strategic about. So in terms of like, should a funnel have multiple offers? I would say that that's going to kind of depend on your product and kind of what you're selling and kind of what is, generally speaking, if you are ever confused, I think it's always better to not try and reinvent the wheel. What are other people in your industry doing? What are you seeing working? Because at the end of the day, if you've seen one thing that every marketer does, and I don't know if a lot of people are very upfront about it, other people like try and act like they do it. every single marketer will go to certain libraries, Facebook ad library, Google Transparency Center, and they will say, what has been up for 2 to 3 weeks? Oh,
Mhm.
they've been spending for a month. That probably means they're seeing a return. Rather than me thinking about my own cool idea, which the market may tell me is stupid, I'm just going to do what they do and see how that does, right? So when it comes to should you do this, should you do that, should you do anything, my first point of contact, and especially if somebody, if you're trying to figure out on your own, the first thing you should do is just look what's working already and follow suit and make changes as you go from there.
Yeah, that's great advice. I've worked in the world of market research, worked in advertising, seen it all, and it's the first thing we would do. Honestly, over my many years, if someone says, "Hey, we're trying to break a certain financial milestone," we have to go look what the competitor's doing and then find our unique way through that because they're already spending millions of dollars on these ads, millions. So there's a reason why people are spending those those millions of dollars. I hear a lot of marketers say, we don't ever do anything without a free offer. I've met a lot of marketers in my day that say they never do anything without free. Free download, free ebook, free course, free samples. I mean, right? Costco. We go to Costco on a Saturday, free. What's your take on free as it relates to building up a good offer?
Yeah, I mean, so I I I don't agree with you can't do anything without free,
True.
but but free and your ability to leverage the term free is, in my opinion, one of the most important skills you can have as a marketer, just because it's free. So to be able to get people in the door, to be able to have an effective mousetrap, as we call it, free is going to be the best term to be able to use. And I was actually thinking through this because I was having to build out, I was working with a quite a big company that has done very, very well in terms of, warm, their kind of warm leads and being able to convert those into a lot of customers. But in terms of, the offers that you need to have for it to work in a cold audience, that's completely different, right? So that's what we're building out. And I was really thinking through the whole free thing. And I think when it comes to free, it's important to remember that like within the term free, there are many ways to skin the cat. Like, you can have something along the lines of like a free bribe offer. So like you get something free if you purchase this, right? You've still got that money up front, but you've used the word free to be able to get that person through the door. You can have kind of like a limited free offer. So it's like, hey, you can do this thing, right? That's okay for free. Let's say it's like a you're a personal trainer. I will train you once a week for free for 30 days. Or I could for $29 a month or whatever, again, probably wouldn't be the best in personal training, but just for the purpose of the point, for $29 a month, I'll train you 4 times a week. I'll give you a meal plan, I'll give you all these things. And actually what you've done is that you've actually anchored your price with free. It's kind of more of like a closing framework, right? Um, there's very creative ways you can do kind of like a free trial with like a penalty. So it's like, hey, I will train you the 4 times a month. Before I'll train you the 4 times a week for the first month, but you need to put $200 down. And if you miss a single one of those sessions, then you're going to forfeit that $400. So now over the 4 weeks, you're going to train them 16 times, and you have those 16 um opportunities as a way to provide value to them so that they want to stay with you longer term, right? So when leveraging free, that's where understanding your ascension rates and understanding your lifetime value are super duper important, because the better that you understand those metrics, the better you understand how far you can take free for it to still be profitable for you as a business. So kind of, I guess, a quick side note of that is that in order to leverage any offer, and especially free offers, this is where in marketing, data tracking is so important, because the more data you have on your client's journey, how much they're paying you, how long they stay around for, how many, products they end up buying over the course of the year, it makes you able to make better decisions as to be able to spend more or spend less to be able to actually get that person through the door.
Okay, so let's talk about B2B. So there's a lot of sales professionals out there, and when they hear offers, they think that's not for me. That's for e-commerce. That's for something else. Let's say you're trying to sell into government contracts. Let's say you're trying to sell large six-figure, whatever it is, IT or major consulting or something. You're really trying to play with the big boys. How would one leverage offers? Because traditionally it's relationships, it's referrals, it's networking, going to events, right? These are very slow and not scalable.
Mm.
But if you've been doing it for a long time, you're from the old school, then that's how it got done, right?
Mhm.
But I think what I've seen is the new school is actually not doing those old school things, and they're actually becoming far more successful and still getting the leads by doing what we're talking about here. They're actually, I've seen it. I've seen the transition of people using what we're talking about here to go after those old school clients contracts the way they used to do many years ago. What are you seeing as it relates, and what's your kind of take on doing the hardcore B2B high ticket stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think that whether it's high ticket and frankly, more importantly, when you're selling something high ticket, upfront value is going to be way more important because it's a bigger investment, right? So if you're gonna sign up for a six-figure contract, like you need to know that you made the right choice,
Mm.
right? So in those circumstances, understanding LTV, and again, these are going to be bigger companies, so hopefully they're going to have more data on LTV, retention rate, things of that nature. You are potentially going to be spending more money to be able to get these people through the door, right? But what I think that looks like is it looks like a multi-tiered funnel, and that's where offers come into play, right? So yes, you're not going to get the six-figure contract by doing the, hey there, if you're a XYZ looking for this big contract, then, no, you're not going to get a close there. But potentially what it looks like is the top of funnel. Maybe you're actually taking somebody through the entire, all of the stages of awareness, right? Potentially, whatever product you're selling B2B is a solution or a product that is new to the market. So the first thing you need to do is you need to make people aware of your campaign. Then at that point, you can take them through all of the different stages of awareness. But what you can do is that at certain points you can provide certain offers and potentially it's call outs such as, what a lot of, high level marketers will do is if they're running like a retargeting campaign, they'll be like, hey, I saw that you downloaded my ebook. Oh wow, yeah, I did. Well, now they're listening, right? So I definitely think that potentially, gimmicky and again, gimmicky is like a has negative connotations around it, but just like free offers are not going to get you six-figure contracts, right? But what is going to help get you big contracts is using social media platforms to be able to provide as much upfront value. And what that might look like is giving away ebooks, giving away free trainings, leading people through ads into email nurture sequences that are however long to be able to provide as much value as possible. Because once they then know, like, and trust you before they've gotten on the sales call with you, before they've actually connected with your team, now that's when you see it's very, very easy to close. Again, in terms of, when we're talking about the order of importance when we're referring to sales, really and truly, if your funnel is done correctly, the least important thing is your ability to sell, right? If you have a great product market fit, if your funnel process and your offer or your offer structure, your funnel structure is really, really dialed in, then in an ideal world, you should be getting on sales calls with people that already know you, they already like you, and they already trust you. And all they want to do is see your process and kind of tick off a couple boxes before saying, hey, where do I pay? Right. So yes, in the old school world, I can see how it can seem gimmicky, but you know, nothing ever will beat upfront value. And I think just the internet gives you an opportunity to be able to provide value to a wider audience easier.
Jacob, thank you. Uh,
Of course.
just drops like major knowledge bombs the whole way through. And this is going to be one of those that's definitely worth a rewatch. If someone were to want to reach out and get a hold of you and work with you, how do they do that?
Yeah, I think the best way to reach out to me would be my email address. That's JIWOWO at elevatemarketinggroup.co.uk. I believe that Tim will be dropping that
Mhm.
somewhere. Also, I've been meaning for quite a while now to get on LinkedIn. Thank you, Tim, for giving me the motivation to finally not be lazy and pull the trigger on that. So I just released my LinkedIn page, so you can also follow me on there and reach out to me on there. It's not as built out as you may imagine, so give me some time. But yeah, I'd say either email or hit me up on LinkedIn would be the two best ways to get in touch with me.